London, 1815. The night was crisp with autumn's first breath when Lady Annalise Montrose returned to London. The city had not changed in her 5 years of exile. The same cobblestone streets, the same towering mansions, the same whispers that could destroy a woman's life in an instant. She stood before the grand entrance of Lady Featherington's annual autumn ball. Music drifted through the open windows. Laughter spilled onto the street. Inside waited the man who had shattered her heart and the woman who had betrayed her trust. 5 years ago, Annalise had fled London in disgrace, accused of betraying the Duke of Ravenshire's confidence and selling his family secrets to rival nobles. A scandal manufactured by her dearest friend. A lie that Edmund Ravenshire, the man she loved, had believed without question. Now she had returned. No longer the naive young woman of 19, no longer the trusted companion of nobility. No longer in love, at least that's what she told herself. Lady Waverley, the footman announced, using the name she had inherited along with her late uncle's fortune. The ballroom fell silent. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Fans stopped their fluttering dance. Even the musicians seemed to hesitate. Annalise stepped forward, chin held high. Her gown of midnight blue whispered against the marble floor. A deliberate choice, that colour. The exact shade of the Ravenshire family crest. Across the room, she saw him, Edmund, the Duke of Ravenshire. He stood frozen, champagne glass halfway to his lips, his dark eyes widened with shock, with recognition. Impossible, someone whispered nearby. But Annalise knew better. Nothing was impossible when revenge burned in your heart. The crowd parted before her like the sea. She moved through them with practiced grace. A smile curved her lips as she greeted acquaintances who had once shunned her. Money and a new title had a way of making people forget past scandals, or pretend to forget at least. Lady Amelia Blackwood, once her dearest friend and ultimate betrayer, stood near the refreshment table. Her face had gone pale as death. Good. Let them all tremble. Annalise had returned to London for one purpose, to dismantle the lives of those who had dismantled hers, starting with the Duke. Edmund Ravenshire couldn't breathe. The room spun around him. The faces of the ton blurred into insignificance. She was here. Annalise. His Annalise. But no, that wasn't right. She called herself Lady Waverley now, and the cold determination in her eyes made it clear she was no longer his. Had never been his, perhaps. 5 years had only enhanced her beauty, the softness of youth replaced by elegant angles. Her auburn hair swept up in a sophisticated arrangement that highlighted the graceful curve of her neck. That neck he had once kissed beneath the willow tree on his country estate. "Your Grace," Lord Pembroke appeared at his side, "you look as though you've seen a ghost." "Perhaps I have," Edmund replied, his voice rough. He watched as Annalise charmed the Countess of Harrington, watched as she laughed at something Lord Bridgerton whispered in her ear, watched as she deliberately avoided looking in his direction. The musicians struck up a waltz. Edmund moved before he could think better of it. "Cut through the crowd with single-minded focus. Lady Waverley," he said, bowing before her, "may I have this dance?" Annalise turned slowly. Her green eyes met his without a flicker of emotion. "Your Grace," she curtsied with perfect form, "I'm afraid I'm engaged for this dance. The next, then, spoken for as well." Edmund lowered his voice. "You cannot avoid me all evening, cannot I?" A small smile played at the corner of her lips. 5 years is nothing compared to one evening, Your Grace." She turned away from him, accepting Lord Bridgerton's arm. Edmund stood rooted to the spot, the ache in his chest both familiar and new. She had always been the only woman who could render him speechless. Across the room, he caught sight of Lady Amelia watching the exchange with evident anxiety. The pieces began to click into place. Amelia's sudden departure after Annalise had been sent away. Her reluctance to discuss the scandal. What if he had been wrong? What if they all had been wrong? The evening stretched before him like an eternity. Edmund moved through the motions of polite society while his mind raced with questions. And all the while, Annalise danced with every eligible bachelor in the room. Everyone except him. Annalise slipped away from the ballroom, seeking a moment's peace in Lady Featherington's conservatory. Her cheeks ached from forced smiles. Her heart pounded from maintaining her composure. Seeing Edmund again had affected her more deeply than she had anticipated. The years had been kind to him, the boyish charm replaced by the confident bearing of a powerful man. His dark hair still fell across his forehead in that familiar way that had once made her fingers itch to brush it back. "You always did prefer plants to people at these affairs." Edmund's deep voice came from behind her. Annalise stiffened, but didn't turn. "Some things never change, Your Grace. And some things change beyond recognition." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his familiar scent of sandalwood and bergamot, like a Miss Annalise Montrose becoming Lady Waverley, a convenient inheritance from a distant uncle. She ran a finger along the leaf of a fern, though not nearly as dramatic a transformation as a trusting young woman becoming a social pariah overnight. Edmund flinched. "Annalise, Lady Waverley, if you please." She finally turned to face him. "Miss Montrose no longer exists. I find that hard to believe." His dark eyes searched her face. "I see her in every expression, every gesture." "Then you see a ghost, Your Grace." A muscle worked in his jaw. "Why have you returned to London?" "Perhaps I miss the charming company." Annalise smiled thinly. "Or perhaps I simply wish to claim my rightful place in society." "You never cared for society's approval." "Another thing that has changed." Edmund stepped closer. Too close. The conservatory suddenly felt impossibly small. There was a time when we spoke honestly with each other. His voice had softened. "Do you remember?" Of course she remembered. Long walks through his family's estate. Hours spent discussing books and dreams and fears. The way he had looked at her as though she were the only person in the world who mattered. "I remember believing in fairy tales," she replied coolly. "We all outgrow childish fancies eventually. Is that what we were? A childish fancy?" "We were nothing, Your Grace." The lie burned her throat, a momentary distraction for a duke who could never seriously consider a companion's daughter. Pain flashed in his eyes. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what she had endured. "You know that isn't true." "Do I?" Annalise arched an eyebrow. "Your actions spoke quite clearly. When accusations were made, you didn't defend me. You didn't question the story. You simply believed the worst. I was a fool. On that, at least, we agree." Voices approached from the ballroom. Annalise stepped back, composing her features into a pleasant mask. "If you'll excuse me, Your Grace. I believe Lord Harrington has claimed the next dance." She moved past him toward the door, but his hand caught hers. Just for a moment, a brief burning contact. "This isn't finished between us, Annalise." She pulled her hand away. It was finished 5 years ago. But as she returned to the ballroom, the lingering warmth of his touch betrayed the lie. The morning after Lady Featherington's ball, Edmund paced his study. Sleep had eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Annalise's face, the coldness in her gaze where once there had been warmth. His butler appeared at the door with the morning papers. "The social columns, Your Grace. You requested them immediately." Edmund snatched the papers from the silver tray. There, on the front page of Lady Whistledown's society column, the Tun received quite the shock last evening with the return of a familiar face bearing a new name. Lady Waverley, formerly known to us as Miss Annalise Montrose, has emerged from obscurity with a fortune and title that have the marriage-minded mummers recalculating their strategies. One wonders if certain noble gentlemen are similarly adjusting their perspectives. Edmund threw the paper aside. So it began. The gossip, the speculation. He rang for his carriage. 30 minutes later, he was shown into Lady Amelia Blackwood's drawing room. She received him with visible nervousness. "Your Grace, what an unexpected pleasure, is it?" Edmund remained standing, though she had gestured to a chair. "I think we both know this visit was inevitable the moment Annalise returned to London." Amelia paled. "I don't know what you mean. 5 years ago, you came to me with a story about Annalise selling information about my family to Lord Weston, information that somehow made its way to my father's business rivals. I merely reported what I observed." "Did you?" Edmund stepped closer. "Because I've spent the night remembering details that never quite fit. How convenient it was that you discovered her supposed betrayal. How quickly you stepped in to comfort me afterward." Amelia's hands twisted in her lap. "We were friends. I was concerned for you. Were you also concerned when you accepted my father's money to leave London shortly after Annalise was sent away in disgrace?" Her head snapped up. "How did you? My father's death has made many things clear, including the contents of his private ledgers." The colour drained from Amelia's face. "I don't know what you think you've found. £20,000, a considerable sum for a simple act of friendship. Your father understood the value of loyalty. Did he purchase yours?" Edmund's voice was dangerously soft. "Or did he reward it after you proved useful?" Amelia rose suddenly, moving to the window. "What does it matter now? It's all in the past, not for Annalise." Edmund's hands clenched at his sides. "Not for me. She was nobody. The daughter of a companion. You're a duke. She was everything to me." Amelia turned, her expression hardening. "And now she's Lady Waverley. Rich, titled and clearly determined to make us all pay for past slights. How fortunate for her." "What really happened, Amelia?" She laughed bitterly. "You won't believe me now any more than you questioned me then. We all played our parts, Your Grace. Some of us simply profited more than others." Edmund studied her for a long moment. "I will discover the truth." "The truth," Amelia said softly, "is that some wounds never heal. Some betrayals can never be undone. Remember that before you attempt to rewrite the past." Edmund left with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain. His father and Amelia had conspired to separate him from Annalise. The question was why. The invitations arrived like clockwork after Annalise's dramatic return. Afternoon teas, garden parties, musical evenings. The Tun's curiosity outweighed their previous disdain. Annalise accepted them all. Each social gathering brought new opportunities to rebuild her position, to gather information, to plant seeds of doubt about those who had once destroyed her. She sat in her morning room, reviewing the day's correspondence, when her butler announced an unexpected visitor. "Lady Pembroke requests a moment of your time, my lady." Annalise hesitated. Margaret Pembroke had been kind to her once. Before the scandal. "Show her in." Lady Pembroke entered, elegant as always in a walking dress of pale lavender. Her expression was serious. "Annalise, forgive the intrusion." "Lady Pembroke." Annalise gestured to a chair. "Tea." "No, thank you. This isn't a social call." Margaret sat, arranging her skirts. "I've come to warn me, about Edmund, about Amelia, about reopening old wounds." Annalise's smile was cool. "I'm afraid I don't understand." "Don't you?" Margaret's gaze was direct. "You've returned with a new name and a fortune. You've captured the attention of the Tun. And you've thrown Edmund into a state I haven't seen since you left." "I didn't leave, Lady Pembroke. I was driven out." Margaret sighed. "Yes, you were. And perhaps that was a grave injustice, but pursuing vengeance will bring you no peace. Who says I seek vengeance? The look in your eyes when you watch Edmund across a room. The way you deliberately dance with every man but him. The careful questions you ask about Amelia's finances." Annalise stiffened. She had underestimated Margaret's powers of observation. "You're mistaken." "Am I?" Margaret leaned forward. Annalise, I was fond of you. I believed you were treated unfairly. But this path you're on will destroy whatever chance of happiness remains for you. My happiness was destroyed 5 years ago. Only if you allow it to be." Annalise rose, moving to the window. "Why are you really here, Lady Pembroke? To protect Edmund, or Amelia? To protect you, my dear. From yourself." A bitter laugh escaped Annalise's lips. How kind. But rather too late, don't you think? Margaret stood, moving to stand beside her. It's never too late to choose a different path. Some paths are chosen for us. Perhaps? Margaret touched her arm gently. But we always decide how far to walk them. After she left, Annalise remained at the window. Margaret's warning echoed in her mind. But the older woman didn't understand. This wasn't merely about vengeance. It was about truth, about justice, about reclaiming what had been taken from her. Her lady's maid entered with another letter on a silver tray. "From the Duke of Ravenshire, my lady." Annalise's hand trembled slightly as she broke the seal. "Lady Waverley, I request the honour of your company tomorrow afternoon. My carriage will call for you at 2 o'clock. There are matters of importance we must discuss privately. Ravenshire. No elaborate pleasantries, no explanation, just a command disguised as an invitation. How like Edmund, how like the Duke." Annalise penned her reply with careful deliberation. "Your Grace, I must decline. My schedule is quite full with more agreeable engagements. Lady Waverley." She sealed it with satisfaction. Let him feel what it was to be denied, to be dismissed. Let him wonder what she would do next. Edmund stared at Annalise's curt refusal. He had expected it, yet the disappointment cut deep. Very well, if she wouldn't come to him, he would go where she planned to be. Lady Harrington's musical evening promised to be dreadfully dull, precisely the sort of event Edmund typically avoided. But according to his sources, Lady Waverley had accepted the invitation. The Harrington townhouse buzzed with anticipation when the Duke of Ravenshire was announced. Lady Harrington nearly swooned with delight. "Your Grace! What an unexpected honour!" Edmund smiled politely. "I heard Miss Sheffield was performing. Her reputation as a pianist has reached even my unmusical ears." A transparent excuse, but no one would question it. The privilege of his rank. He scanned the room, finding Annalise immediately. She sat near the window, engaged in conversation with Lord Brighton. Again. Their eyes met briefly. Surprise flashed across her features before she turned back to her companion with deliberate attention. Edmund made his way through the crowd, stopping to exchange pleasantries with various acquaintances, always moving closer to her. When Miss Sheffield was called to the pianoforte, the guests shuffled to find seats. Edmund seized his opportunity, claiming the chair beside Annalise, just as Lord Brighton was detained by his mother. "Lady Waverley," he murmured, as the first notes filled the room. "Your Grace." Her voice was barely audible. "How persistent you are. A family trait. The Ravenshire determination. Some might call it stubbornness. Others, dedication." They fell silent as the music swelled. Edmund was acutely aware of her presence beside him. The subtle fragrance of roses. The way her fingers tapped lightly on her fan in rhythm with the music. When the piece ended, applause filled the room. "I visited Lady Amelia yesterday," he said quietly. Annalise stiffened. "How lovely for you both." "She was paid." "By my father." That caught her attention. She turned slightly toward him, her expression carefully neutral. "Paid for what?" "That's what I intend to discover." Edmund met her gaze directly. "I believe we were both deceived, Annalise." "Lady Waverley," she corrected automatically. "Annalise," he repeated firmly. "Whatever name you choose, you are still the woman I—" "Don't." Her voice was sharp. "Don't say it." Another musical piece began. Edmund leaned closer, his voice for her ears alone. "I have my father's correspondence, his private papers. I believe the answers we both seek are there. A flicker of something, interest, hope, fear, crossed her face. Why tell me this? Because you deserve the truth. Because I should have sought it 5 years ago. Annalise studied him, searching for deception. This could be another trap. It isn't. Your word means little to me now. The truth of that statement hit him like a physical blow. Then judge by actions, not words. Edmund drew a small key from his waistcoat pocket, pressing it into her palm. The East Wing study of Ravenshire House. Tomorrow night. My father's letters are in the locked cabinet beneath the window. Her fingers closed around the key. Why would you give me this? Because I trust you. I always should have. Emotion flickered in her eyes before she masked it. And if I choose not to come, then I will find the truth alone. But I would rather discover it together. The music reached its crescendo. Annalise slipped the key into her reticule. This changes nothing between us. Everything has already changed, Edmund said softly. From the moment you walked back into that ballroom, Ravenshire House loomed against the night sky, its windows glowing with soft lamplight. Annalise gazed up at it from her carriage, heart pounding with uncertainty. Coming here was madness. Edmund could be laying a trap, attempting to create a scandal that would send her fleeing from London once more. Yet the key in her hand felt like a promise, a chance to uncover the truth that had eluded her for 5 years. The side entrance was unlocked as promised. A footman waited to escort her through the servants' passage to the East Wing. His Grace awaits you, my lady. Edmund stood at the window when she entered the study, his tall figure silhouetted against the night. He turned at the sound of the door. You came, against my better judgment. Annalise remained near the door, unwilling to step further into his domain. Show me these papers you claim will reveal the truth. Edmund gestured to the cabinet beneath the window. I haven't opened it. I wanted us to discover the contents together. Annalise moved forward cautiously, withdrawing the key from her reticule. The lock turned with a soft click. Inside lay several leather-bound journals and bundles of correspondence tied with black ribbon. My father's private papers, Edmund explained. When he died last year, I inherited everything, including his secrets, it seems. Annalise lifted out the topmost journal. What makes you think there's anything about me in these? The date. Edmund pointed to the spine where 1810 was stamped in gold. The year you left. They spread the materials across the large desk. Edmund lit additional lamps, casting warm light over the yellowed pages. For an hour, they worked in silence, each reading through different documents. Annalise tried to ignore how familiar it felt, how many evenings they had spent like this in the library at his country estate, sharing interesting passages from their respective books. Here, Edmund's voice broke the silence. A letter from my father to his solicitor, dated 3 days before everything happened. He placed it between them. Annalise leaned forward to read. Harrison must be convinced to withdraw his offer. The girl is a complication we cannot afford. Arrange the usual financial persuasion if necessary. If that fails, we have Blackwood's daughter prepared to assist. Ravenshire must secure the Pembroke alliance. Nothing else is acceptable. Annalise's hands trembled. Harrison. Lord Harrison. Edmund's voice was tight. He approached me about a possible courtship with you. I was going to speak to you about it that weekend at the country estate. But you never did. Because the scandal broke first. Edmund ran a hand through his hair. My father wanted me to marry Lady Pembroke's daughter. For her dowry. The estate was in financial difficulties. Annalise could scarcely breathe. So I was removed as an obstacle. It appears so. They continued searching. More letters, more journal entries, pieces of a puzzle falling into terrible place. Blackwood's girl has performed admirably. The Montrose girl will be gone by week's end. 20,000 is a small price for securing the future of Ravenshire, and later, the Duke remains despondent over the Montrose affair. Perhaps the continental tour will clear his mind of romantic notions. Lady Catherine Pembroke awaits his return with appropriate patience. You never married her, Annalise said quietly. Lady Catherine, Edmund shook his head. I couldn't. Not after. I left for the continent as my father wished, but I refused the match upon my return, which must have pleased him greatly. He disinherited me for a year. A bitter smile crossed Edmund's face, until the war with France threatened his investments and he needed my military connections. Annalise found herself staring at him with new eyes. You defied your father. For a woman you believed had betrayed you. I couldn't bear to pledge myself to anyone else. His gaze met hers. Not when my heart remained with you, despite everything. The admission hung in the air between them. Dangerous, tempting. Annalise turned away, focusing on the documents. There must be more. Something that explains Amelia's specific role. They searched deeper. In a hidden compartment of the desk, they found it. A letter in Amelia's handwriting, addressed to the late Duke. Your Grace, the task is complete. The forged letter has been planted among Annalise's possessions, where your son will find it. I have prepared my statement regarding her meetings with Lord Weston. By week's end, she will be removed from your son's life permanently. I trust you will remember our arrangement once this unpleasant business is concluded. Your obedient servant, Amelia Blackwood. Annalise read the words 3 times before their full meaning penetrated her shock. A forged letter. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. In my handwriting, Edmund's face had gone pale. To Lord Weston, offering information about my family's financial arrangements with the East India Company, information I never possessed. Information my father had told me in confidence just days before. Edmund's voice was hollow. When I found the letter in your room, you believed I had betrayed you. The pieces aligned with terrible clarity. Amelia's friendship, her constant presence, her subtle questions about Edmund's feelings. She was in love with you, Annalise whispered. She wanted my title. Edmund's voice was harsh. And my father's money. She got one, at least. Annalise sank into a chair, the weight of revelation overwhelming her. 5 years, she whispered. 5 years of my life destroyed by lies. Edmund knelt beside her chair. Annalise, I cannot undo the past. I cannot give you back those years. But I swear to you, I will make this right. She looked into his eyes. The guilt, the pain, the determination. How can anyone make this right? He took her hand in his. She should pull away. She should leave. But the warmth of his touch anchored her amid the storm of emotions. We start, he said softly, by ensuring Amelia never harms anyone again. News of Lady Amelia Blackwood's hasty departure from London spread through the ton like wildfire. Some claimed a family emergency in the countryside. Others whispered of mounting debts and creditors closing in. Lady Whistledown's column offered the most tantalizing speculation. This author wonders what connection might exist between Lady B's sudden journey and the equally sudden friendship rekindled between a certain duke and a recently returned lady. Coincidences do occur in our little society, but rarely with such interesting timing. Annalise read the column over breakfast, a small smile playing at her lips. Edmund had been true to his word. A discreet visit to Amelia, armed with evidence of her deception, had been all it took. The choice between public disgrace and quiet retreat had not been difficult for Amelia to make, but the victory felt hollow. 5 years couldn't be reclaimed with a single confrontation. Her butler appeared with a silver tray. A delivery from Ravenshire House, my lady. A small mahogany box sat on the tray, accompanied by a note in Edmund's bold handwriting. Annalise, what was taken can never truly be restored, but perhaps what was lost can be found again, if you are willing. Edmund. Inside the box lay a pressed rose, dried and fragile, but still bearing hints of its original yellow hue. Annalise's breath caught. She remembered the day Edmund had given her that rose in the gardens at Ravenshire's country estate, the first time he had kissed her. She had pressed it between the pages of her favourite book of poetry, a book she had been forced to leave behind when she fled London. He had kept it. All these years, emotions warred within her. The vengeful woman who had returned to London demanded she send it back. Cut this final tie. But the young girl who had once loved with her whole heart whispered of second chances. Before she could decide, her lady's maid announced another visitor. "Lady Pembroke asks to see you, my lady." Margaret Pembroke entered with purpose in her stride. "You've been busy, my dear." "Have I?" Annalise closed the box quickly. "Amelia fleeing London. The Duke calling on you 3 times this week. The Ton is positively buzzing with speculation. People will always talk." "Indeed." Margaret settled into a chair. "But I prefer truth to gossip. Edmund told me everything." Annalise stiffened. "Everything. About his father's schemes, Amelia's betrayal, the lies that sent you away." Margaret's eyes were kind. "And about his feelings for you, then and now. His feelings are his concern. Are they?" Margaret nodded toward the small box. "That seems rather more intimate than mere concern." Annalise sighed. "Why are you here, Lady Pembroke?" "To offer advice, if you'll accept it." "And what advice would that be?" "Don't allow the past to poison your future." Margaret leaned forward earnestly. "You were wronged. Grievously so, but now you have a chance that few are given, a chance to reclaim not just your position in society, but your heart." "My heart is well guarded now." "Is it?" Margaret smiled gently. "Or is it simply afraid?" The question struck deeper than Annalise cared to admit. "Edmund believed the worst of me once. How can I trust that he won't again? Because he spent 5 years paying for that mistake." Margaret's voice softened. "He refused Catherine despite being disinherited. He threw himself into military service during the war. He searched for you after his father died. He searched for me. This was news. For months. Until he heard of your uncle's death and your inheritance of the Waverley title. He hoped you might return to London of your own accord." Margaret smiled. "And you did. Though perhaps not for the reasons he hoped." Annalise turned to the window, struggling to maintain her composure. "I came back for revenge. Did you? Or did you come back to finally face what was taken from you?" Before Annalise could answer, her butler appeared again. "The Duke of Ravenshire's carriage has arrived, my lady. For the drive to Richmond you arranged." Margaret rose with a knowing smile. "It seems you've already begun to answer my question." After she left, Annalise stood before her mirror, studying her reflection. The woman who had returned to London for vengeance seemed a stranger now. Edmund waited in the entrance hall, handsome in a dark blue coat that matched his family crest. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "I wasn't certain you would keep our engagement," he said as he helped her into the carriage. "Nor was I," Annalise admitted. As the carriage pulled away from her townhouse, Edmund reached for her hand. "Thank you for giving me this chance, Annalise." She didn't pull away. "I'm not certain what I'm giving you a chance to do. To show you that the man you once knew still exists." His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. "Older. Wiser, I hope. But still yours. If you'll have him." The sincerity in his eyes made her heart ache. "We can't simply return to the past, Edmund." "No," he agreed. "But perhaps we can build something new from its ashes." As the carriage carried them toward Richmond Park, Annalise found herself wondering if vengeance had ever been what her heart truly sought, or if, perhaps, it had been seeking this moment all along. Richmond Park spread before them, its ancient trees adorned in autumn glory. Edmund had arranged a private picnic in a secluded glade, away from curious eyes and wagging tongues. As they walked arm in arm along a leaf-strewn path, Annalise felt the tension gradually leaving her body, the fresh air, the dappled sunlight, the comfortable silence between them. "I used to imagine bringing you here," Edmund said after a while. Before everything. Did you? He nodded. I had many plans for us. Places I wanted to show you. Experiences I wanted to share. You never spoke of them. I was waiting for the right moment. Regret shadowed his features. I thought we had time. They reached the picnic spot, a plaid blanket spread beneath a massive oak, a wicker basket filled with delicacies, a bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket. Your staff is remarkably efficient, Annalise observed, as Edmund helped her settle on the blanket. They've had years of practice, anticipating my needs. He poured 2 glasses of champagne. Though arranging picnics has rarely been among my requests. No. I would have thought the Duke of Ravensshire entertained regularly in the great outdoors. Edmund smiled ruefully. I've not been much for entertaining these past years. The ton would be shocked to hear it. The mysterious Duke who keeps to himself except for matters of business and politics. You've been asking about me. Annalise accepted the glass he offered. Know thy enemy. Is that what I am to you? An enemy. The directness of the question caught her off guard. She took a sip of champagne to buy herself time. You were, she admitted finally, when I first returned. And now? Annalise met his gaze. I don't know what you are to me now, Edmund. He reached across the space between them, his fingers brushing a stray curl from her cheek. I would very much like to find out. The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with possibility. Annalise broke it first, turning her attention to the picnic basket. What delicacies has your remarkably efficient staff provided? Edmund allowed the shift, though his eyes remained intent on her face as he unpacked the meal. Crusty bread, cheese, cold meats, fresh berries. They ate and talked of safe topics. Books they had read, changes in London, mutual acquaintances. It wasn't until they had finished eating that Edmund broached more dangerous territory. Tell me about the years away, Annalise. Where did you go when you left London? She traced the pattern on the blanket with her fingertip. Northumberland, initially, a small village where no one knew of the scandal. I worked as a governess under a different name. A governess. Surprise colored his voice. Did you imagine I would simply disappear into thin air? A hint of the old bitterness crept into her tone. I had no money, no connections, no references. Edmund's face darkened with guilt. I never considered. I should have ensured you were provided for. I didn't want your charity. Not charity. Edmund's voice was rough with emotion. Responsibility. Justice. Justice would have been believing me. The words hung between them, raw and painful. Yes, Edmund agreed after a long moment. That would have been justice. Annalise hadn't expected his agreement. It disarmed her. The family I served was kind, she continued after a pause. The children were sweet. I might have stayed longer if not for their uncle. What happened? He recognized me. A distant acquaintance of your father's, I believe. He threatened to reveal my true identity unless she hesitated, accepted his attentions. Edmund's expression darkened dangerously. His name. It doesn't matter now. It matters to me. Annalise shook her head. I left before the situation deteriorated, found a position farther north, then another. I moved frequently, always fearing discovery. Until your uncle died. Yes, Uncle Waverley, whom I'd met precisely twice in my life. He left everything to me, his only living relative, the title, the fortune, the freedom. You could have gone anywhere. Edmund's gaze was intense. Why return to London? The question that had haunted her for months. She had told herself it was for revenge, for justice, for reclaiming what was rightfully hers. But in this moment, with Edmund looking at her as though she were, with Edmund looking at her as though she were the answer to a question he had been asking for years, the truth emerged. I needed to face it, she said softly. The past, the pain. I couldn't truly move forward until I confronted what had broken me. Edmund reached for her hand, enfolding it in his. "And have you confronted it?" "I'm beginning to." A breeze stirred the leaves above them, sending dappled sunlight dancing across their faces. In this secluded corner of Richmond Park, the demands of society seemed distant, unimportant. "I have something to show you," Edmund said, reaching into his coat pocket. He withdrew a small leather book. "My journal from the months after you left." Annalise stared at it. "Why would you show me this?" "So you can understand how desperately I regretted believing the lies. How I searched for you even then, until my father threatened to ruin your reputation beyond repair if I continued." He placed the journal in her hands. She traced the worn edges, the faded leather cover. "Read it," he urged. "Not now, but when you're ready. When you want to know what those years were like for me." Annalise slipped the small book into her reticule. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to revisit that time. For either of us. You're the strongest person I've ever known, Annalise." Edmund's voice was soft but certain. "You survived what would have destroyed most people. You rebuilt your life. You returned to face your demons." "Not all of them," she whispered. Their eyes locked, understanding passing between them. They both knew which demon she had yet to face. The one sitting before her now, the one looking at her with such tenderness it made her heart ache. The sun began its descent toward the horizon. Edmund packed the remnants of their picnic, his movements efficient yet unhurried. As they walked back toward the waiting carriage, he offered his arm. Annalise hesitated only a moment before accepting it, her hand resting lightly in the crook of his elbow. "Will you allow me to call on you again?" Edmund asked as they reached the park entrance. A week ago, she would have refused without hesitation. But now, with the truth unfolding between them, with the past beginning to loosen its grip on her heart. "Yes," she said simply. His smile was like the breaking of dawn after the longest night. The invitation to Lady Hartwick's masquerade ball arrived on heavy cream parchment edged in gold, the most anticipated event of the season, a chance for the ton to indulge in fantasy and flirtation behind the anonymity of masks. Annalise had planned to decline. But Edmund's visits over the past week had awakened something she had thought long dead: curiosity, hope, desire. They had fallen into a pattern: afternoon walks in the park, chess matches in her drawing room, conversations that stretched long into the evening. Always proper, always chaperoned, always crackling with unspoken possibilities. She had not yet read his journal. It sat in her bedside drawer, both temptation and threat. "Your costume is complete, my lady," her maid announced, carrying in a garment of shimmering silver blue. Annalise ran her fingers over the delicate fabric. The dressmaker had outdone herself. The gown of a frost queen, with crystals scattered like ice across the bodice and hem. A half-mask of silver filigree and tiny diamonds completed the ensemble. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Her butler appeared with yet another delivery. "From the Duke of Ravensshire, my lady." Inside the package lay a delicate silver necklace, a single teardrop sapphire surrounded by diamonds. The note accompanying it was brief: "To match your eyes, and perhaps one day your heart. E." Annalise closed her fingers around the jewel, emotion threatening to overwhelm her careful composure. Every day another small gesture, another step toward breaking down the walls she had built. She should refuse the gift. Send it back with a polite but firm reminder that they were not what they once were to each other. Instead, she lifted it from the velvet box and fastened it around her neck. That evening, Annalise entered Lady Hartwick's ballroom like a vision from winter's heart. The whispers followed her, speculation about her costume, about the magnificent sapphire at her throat, about the Duke who had sent his regrets to every social engagement that season except those attended by Lady Waverley. She scanned the room, searching for Edmund among the masked revellers, pirates, shepherdesses, historical figures, mythological creatures, but no sign of the one face she sought. Lady Waverley, a gentleman in the costume of a medieval knight, bowed before her. "May I have this dance?" His voice was disguised, but Annalise would know those shoulders anywhere. "You're late, Your Grace." Edmund's eyes sparkled behind his mask. A duke is never late. Everyone else is simply early. The orchestra began a waltz. Edmund led her onto the floor with practiced ease. His hand at her waist burned through the thin fabric of her gown. "The necklace suits you," he murmured as they moved in perfect rhythm. "It's far too extravagant. Nothing is too extravagant for you. People are talking. Let them." They danced in silence for several measures, their bodies remembering the patterns they had traced 5 years before. "I'm leaving London," Edmund said suddenly. Annalise nearly missed a step. "When?" "Tomorrow. For Ravenshire Park. Estate business that cannot be postponed." "I see." She fought to keep her voice neutral. "Come with me." The request was so unexpected, so improper that Annalise could only stare at him. "As my guest," he clarified. "Lady Pembroke has agreed to accompany us as chaperone. It's impossible, is it?" His eyes searched hers. Or merely frightening? Both. The music drew to a close. Edmund guided her toward the terrace doors. The autumn night was cool, but not unpleasant. They stood side by side, looking out over the illuminated gardens. "It's where everything began, Annalise." Edmund's voice was soft, "and where everything fell apart. Perhaps it's where we can start again, with Lady Pembroke watching our every move." A smile tugged at his lips. Margaret has always been remarkably selective about what she observes. Annalise toyed with her fan. "It's too soon." "Is it?" He turned to face her fully. 5 years wasn't long enough. A week of afternoon visits isn't sufficient. Tell me, Annalise, how much time must pass before you're willing to trust your heart again. That's unfair, perhaps, but I'm growing desperate. Edmund stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I've watched you rebuild your walls each evening after I leave. I've seen you battle against whatever is growing between us. I cannot bear to lose you again, not when we're so close to finding our way back." Annalise stared up at him, at the passion and pain in his eyes, at the love he made no attempt to disguise. "I read your journal," she admitted. Surprise flickered across his features. "When?" "Last night. I couldn't sleep. And I never knew, Edmund, how deeply you suffered. How hard you fought to find me. Until I gave up," he said bitterly, "until I let my father win. You were 24, facing the full power of a duke. What choice did you have? I should have chosen you. Every day. Every time." His voice broke. "I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I didn't." The raw honesty in his words stripped away her final defenses. "Ask me again," she whispered. His eyes widened with understanding. "Annalise Montrose, Lady Waverley, the only woman I have ever truly loved. Will you come to Ravenshire Park with me? Will you give us the chance we were denied?" "Yes." The single word changed everything. Edmund's face transformed with joy. He reached for her hand, pressing it to his lips in a gesture that was both courtly and intimate. "Tomorrow, then," he said. "Tomorrow." As they returned to the ballroom, Annalise felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of vengeance lifted from her shoulders, replaced by something far more precious. Hope, Ravenshire Park, rose from the autumn mist like something from a fairy tale. Ancient stone walls, towering turrets, gardens that stretched toward distant woods. Annalise gazed at it through the carriage window, memories flooding back with painful clarity. The last time she had seen these gates, she had been fleeing in disgrace. Heartbroken, humiliated. Now she returned as Lady Waverley, head held high, no longer the naive girl who had lost everything, but a woman who had survived and rebuilt her life. And beside her, Edmund watched with anxious eyes, as though afraid she might change her mind even now. Lady Pembroke dozed in the opposite seat, her presence both protection and permission for this unconventional visit. "We're home," Edmund said softly as the carriage rolled to a stop before the main entrance. Home. The word stirred something in Annalise's chest, a longing she had suppressed for years. The household staff lined up to greet them, many faces familiar from years before. Some openly stared at Annalise, recognition dawning in their eyes. "Welcome back to Ravenshaw Park, Lady Waverley." Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, curtsied deeply. "Your rooms have been prepared in the east wing." "Thank you, Mrs. Winters," Annalise replied, noting the woman's careful use of her title. "It's good to see you again." The older woman's eyes softened. "And you, my lady. And you." Edmund led them into the grand entrance hall, its soaring ceiling and sweeping staircase exactly as Annalise remembered. "After you've rested from the journey, perhaps you'd care for a tour of the gardens," Edmund suggested. "They've changed somewhat since you were last here." "I'd like that." Lady Pembroke yawned delicately. "I believe I shall rest until dinner. The journey has quite exhausted me." Annalise suspected the older woman's fatigue was more strategic than genuine, but she merely smiled. "Of course, we shall see you at dinner." Once they had been shown to their rooms, Annalise stood at the window, looking out over the familiar landscape, the formal gardens, the lake beyond, the woods where she and Edmund had walked so many times, discussing dreams and plans that had never come to fruition. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Her maid answered it, returning with a small note. "His Grace asks if you're ready for that garden tour, my lady." Annalise changed into a walking dress of deep blue, adorned with simple silver buttons, practical yet elegant, a statement of her new position in the world. Edmund waited at the foot of the grand staircase, his face lighting up when he saw her. "You look beautiful. It's only a walking dress. You would make sackcloth look like the finest silk," he replied, "but I've always been partial to you in blue." They stepped outside into the crisp autumn air. The gardens were ablaze with fall colours, the late blooming flowers adding splashes of purple and gold among the turning leaves. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following paths that wound between sculpted hedges and ornamental ponds. "This is new," Annalise observed, as they reached a secluded garden enclosed by stone walls. A riot of roses in every hue climbed the walls and arched over the entrance. "I had it planted 3 years ago," Edmund said, his voice oddly hesitant. "After I returned from the peninsula. It's beautiful." He led her to a stone bench at the center of the garden. Yellow roses, exactly like the one he had given her years ago, surrounded it in profusion. "I call it Annalise's garden," he said quietly. She stared at him, momentarily speechless. "Even when I believed you had betrayed me, I couldn't stop loving you," Edmund continued. "This was my way of keeping you close. A place where I could remember the good times before everything fell apart." Emotion welled up in Annalise's throat. "You built me a garden. I built you a sanctuary, for myself initially. But now," he took her hand in his, "now perhaps it can be for both of us." She looked around at the roses, at the sheltered beauty of this place created in her name, at the man who had never stopped loving her, even when he believed the worst. "It's perfect," she whispered. Edmund's fingers tightened around hers. "There's something else I want to show you." He led her through the far gate of the rose garden, along a winding path that led to the lake. A small island sat at its center, accessible only by boat. "Do you remember?" he asked. How could she forget? The island had been their special place, where they had shared their first kiss, where Edmund had first told her he loved her. A rowboat waited at the small dock. Edmund helped her in, then took the oars himself, declining the offer of the waiting boatman. "I thought we might go alone," he explained as he rowed them across the still water. "Is that wise, Your Grace?" Annalise's tone was light, but her heart raced. Without a chaperone, his smile was both boyish and seductive. Probably not. But when have I ever been wise where you're concerned? The island was just as she remembered, a tiny paradise of wild beauty. Weeping willows trailed their branches in the water. Late wildflowers dotted the grass. At the centre, a stone bench overlooked the lake and the manor beyond. Edmund secured the boat and helped her onto the shore. His hand lingered on hers longer than necessary. "I used to dream of bringing you back here," he said as they walked toward the bench. "Did you?" Nearly every night for 5 years. They reached the bench. Annalise ran her fingers over the smooth stone, worn by generations of Ravenshire dukes and their companions. "The last time we were here," Edmund said softly, "I made you a promise. You promised many things, Edmund. I promised to love you forever." He turned to face her fully. "It's the one promise I've managed to keep." The directness of his gaze, the raw emotion in his voice, stripped away the last of Annalise's defenses. "I tried to hate you," she whispered. "When I came back to London, I wanted to make you suffer as I had suffered. I deserved nothing less, but I couldn't do it." She looked out over the water, unable to meet his eyes. "Even when I thought you had betrayed me, some part of me still loved you, still wanted to believe in you." Edmund moved closer, his hand coming up to gently turn her face toward his. "Annalise," he said, his voice husky with emotion, "I have no right to ask anything of you, no right to hope, but I cannot stop myself from hoping, from asking. Asking what? For forgiveness, for a second chance, for your heart, which I so carelessly wounded." The moment stretched between them, 5 years of pain and longing, distilled into a single breath. "I'm afraid," Annalise admitted. "Afraid to trust again. Afraid to love again." "I know." His thumb traced the curve of her cheek. "But if you'll let me, I'll spend every day proving that your trust is not misplaced, that your love is the most precious gift in this world." A tear slipped down Annalise's cheek. Edmund caught it with his fingertip. "Don't cry, my love. My heart never fully recovered," she whispered, "from loving you, from losing you." "Then perhaps," Edmund said softly, "we can heal each other." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. But Annalise remained still, her heart pounding as his lips met hers in a kiss that was both achingly familiar and entirely new. The years fell away. The pain receded. In its place bloomed something tentative and fragile and infinitely precious. Hope. The week at Ravenshire Park passed like a dream. Days spent rediscovering the estate and each other, evenings of music and conversation in the drawing room, Lady Pembroke maintaining a proper but unobtrusive presence. On their final night, a storm lashed the ancient windows. Rain pounded against the glass. Lightning illuminated the grounds in brief, brilliant flashes. Annalise stood in the library, running her fingers along the spines of books she had once loved. Edmund watched her from his position near the fireplace, his expression unreadable in the flickering light. The moment felt weighted with significance. Tomorrow they would return to London, to society and its expectations, to decisions that could no longer be delayed. "I've been thinking," Edmund said, breaking the comfortable silence. "A dangerous pastime," Annalise teased, though her heart had begun to race. "Indeed." He moved to stand beside her at the bookshelf, especially for a man who once made the gravest error of his life through lack of proper thought. Annalise selected a volume of poetry, the very one in which she had pressed his rose. "Is that what brings such solemnity to your expression? Past errors?" "No." He gently took the book from her hands, replacing it on the shelf. "Future possibilities." The air between them seemed to vibrate with tension. Not the antagonism of their first reunion, but something far more electric, more dangerous. "What possibilities do you envision, Your Grace?" She deliberately used his title, a small reminder of the distance between them. Edmund's smile was wry. "None that would be proper to discuss without first seeking your guardian's permission." I have no guardian, Edmund. I am a woman of independent means. Then I shall have to seek your permission directly. For what? Instead of answering, he reached into his waistcoat pocket and withdrew a small object. Annalise's breath caught as he opened his hand to reveal a ring, a perfect sapphire surrounded by diamonds, matching the necklace he had given her. "This belonged to my grandmother," Edmund said softly. "Not the Duchess my grandfather married for political alliance, but the woman he loved in secret all his life. He gave it to her on her deathbed, and made my father promise it would one day go to a match made for love, not advantage." "It's beautiful," Annalise whispered. "My father kept his promise in an unexpected way. He left it directly to me in his will, with instructions that it should go to the woman who held my heart, not my title. The irony that the man who had separated them would provide the ring that might unite them was not lost on Annalise. And does someone hold your heart, your grace? Edmund's eyes never left hers. You know she does. She always has. Even when I was fool enough to doubt her, my heart remained hers. Annalise struggled to breathe, to think clearly through the storm of emotions his words evoked. "Before you say anything," Edmund continued, "I want you to know that I expect no answer tonight, or tomorrow. I will wait as long as necessary. Years, if that's what it takes. Years." Annalise's voice was barely audible. "We've already lost 5. Edmund took her hand in his. "I would rather wait 10 more and win your heart truly than rush you into a decision you might come to regret. And if my answer is no, if I cannot overcome the past, then I will respect your decision," he said, though pain flashed in his eyes, "and count myself fortunate to have known and loved you, however briefly." Annalise looked down at their joined hands, at the ring resting in his palm, at the future it represented, and what of society, the whispers, the scandal of a duke marrying a woman once accused of betraying his family. Edmund's laugh was short and harsh. "Society. The same society that cast you out on the word of a jealous girl and a manipulative old man. I care nothing for their approval. You say that now, but—" "No, Annalise." His voice was firm. "I defied my father for you when I believed you had betrayed me. Do you think I would hesitate to defy the ton now that I know the truth?" Outside, thunder crashed. The rain beat harder against the windows. Inside, the only sound was the crackling of the fire and their uneven breathing. "I need time," Annalise said finally. "Take all you need." Edmund closed his fingers around the ring, then pressed it into her palm. "Keep this while you decide, as a reminder that my heart is yours, regardless of your answer." Her fingers closed around the cool metal. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll consider the possibility of a future together. Say you'll try to forgive, even if you cannot forget." "I'll try," she whispered. "That's all I ask." Edmund lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "For now." Lady Pembroke's discreet cough from the doorway reminded them they were not entirely alone. Edmund stepped back, though reluctance was clear in every line of his body. "I believe it's time we retired," Lady Pembroke said, her knowing gaze moving between them. "The storm is growing worse, and we have an early start tomorrow." "Of course," Annalise murmured, grateful for the interruption. The intensity of the moment had left her feeling both exhilarated and terrified. That night, sleep eluded her. The ring rested on her bedside table, catching the occasional flash of lightning. In her hand, she held Edmund's journal, rereading passages that revealed the depth of his regret, his love, his search for her across England. Tomorrow, they would return to London, to reality, away from this enchanted interlude where healing had begun and love had rekindled. Could she trust it? Trust him? Trust herself? As dawn broke through the storm clouds, Annalise made her decision. London welcomed them back with its usual combination of smoke, noise, and relentless social demands. Within hours of their return, invitations began arriving at Annalise's townhouse. Inquiries about her time in the country, thinly veiled questions about her relationship with the Duke. Lady Whistledown's column was particularly pointed. A certain lady and a certain duke have returned from a week in the country, chaperoned only by the ever-accommodating Lady P. One wonders what momentous discussions might have occurred amid the rural splendor, and what announcements we might anticipate in the coming days. Annalise tossed the paper aside with a sigh. News travelled too quickly in London. Expectations formed before decisions could be made. Edmund called that afternoon, impeccably dressed and properly reserved, in the presence of her butler and maid. "You look well, Lady Waverley," he said formally as he accepted a cup of tea. "The country air suited you." "Thank you, Your Grace." It was a refreshing change from London's atmosphere. They maintained this polite charade until the servants withdrew, leaving them in relative privacy, the door ajar as propriety demanded. "I've missed you," Edmund said, his voice dropping to an intimate murmur. "Even though it's been less than a day," Annalise smiled despite herself, "we've become quite accustomed to each other's company this past week." "Indeed." He leaned forward, his expression growing serious. "Have you had time to consider?" She knew exactly what he meant. Her hand went automatically to her pocket, where the ring rested in a small velvet pouch. "London has a way of intruding on one's thoughts," she replied. "I've been besieged by visitors and invitations since my return. If you need more time—" "No." Annalise met his gaze directly. "I don't need more time, Edmund. I've had 5 years of time. What I need is courage." Hope flared in his eyes. "And have you found it?" Before she could answer, her butler appeared at the door. "Forgive the interruption, my lady, but Lord Weston has called and insists on seeing you immediately. He claims it's a matter of utmost urgency." Annalise and Edmund exchanged alarmed glances. Lord Weston, the very man who had been implicated in the scheme that destroyed her reputation. "Show him in," Annalise said after a moment's hesitation. Lord Weston entered like a thundercloud, his normally jovial face set in lines of anger. He stopped short when he saw Edmund. "Ravenshire. Good. You're here too. Saves me the trouble of finding you next." "What can we do for you, Weston?" Edmund asked, rising to his feet. "You can explain why Lady Blackwood is spreading vicious rumours about my involvement in the scandal that sent Miss Montrose." He bowed slightly to Annalise, now Lady Waverley, from London 5 years ago. "Amelia is back in London." Annalise's voice was flat. "Arrived yesterday." Weston paced the length of the room. "And has wasted no time trying to salvage her reputation by further destroying yours." "And mine. What exactly is she saying?" Edmund asked, his voice dangerously controlled. "That I conspired with her and the late Duke to separate you from Miss Montrose. That I was to be rewarded with certain business advantages. That I willingly participated in the destruction of an innocent young woman's reputation for financial gain." "And did you?" Annalise couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Weston turned to her, his expression softening. "No, my lady, I did not. In fact, I spoke against the rumours when they first emerged. I told anyone who would listen that you were not the sort of person to betray confidences, but few were willing to contradict the Duke of Ravenshire." "Why would Amelia implicate you now?" Edmund asked. "Because she's desperate." Weston sank into a chair without waiting for an invitation. "The story of your discovery, of the evidence against her, has begun to circulate. She's trying to spread the blame, to make herself appear as a pawn rather than an instigator." Annalise's mind raced. If Amelia was back and spreading fresh lies, the tentative peace she and Edmund had found was at risk. "What do you propose, Lord Weston?" Annalise asked. "A unified front. The 3 of us appearing together at Lady Harrington's ball tomorrow night." making it clear that we stand together against these falsehoods. It would certainly make a statement, Edmund mused. But is it wise to acknowledge these rumors at all? They're already acknowledged, Weston replied grimly. Amelia has seen to that. Our silence now would only be interpreted as guilt. He's right, Annalise said after a moment's consideration. We must confront this directly. Then we are agreed. Weston rose to his feet. I shall call for you both tomorrow evening. Together, we will put an end to this nonsense once and for all. After he left, Edmund turned to Annalise, concern etched on his features. Are you certain about this? It will mean facing Amelia, revisiting the scandal publicly. I've spent 5 years running from that scandal, Edmund. Annalise's voice was steady. I won't run any more. Not from Amelia, not from the past, not from the truth. He took her hand, pressing it between both of his. You continue to amaze me with your courage. She smiled faintly. You once told me I was the strongest person you'd ever known. Tomorrow we'll put that to the test. As Edmund prepared to take his leave, Annalise made a decision. She withdrew the small velvet pouch from her pocket. Before you go, she said softly, I have something for you. Edmund watched with confused eyes as she placed the pouch in his palm. He opened it slowly, his expression changing to one of disappointment when he saw the ring. I understand, he said, his voice carefully controlled. You've made your decision, yes, but not the one you think. Annalise stepped closer, her heart pounding. I'm returning the ring because I want you to ask me properly. When this is finally over, when the last shadows have been banished from our past, hope blazed in Edmund's eyes. I mean that I love you, Edmund Ravenshire. I never stopped, even when I wanted to, even when I tried to hate you. Annalise's voice trembled with emotion. But before I can accept your proposal, we must face Amelia together, end this once and for all. Edmund pulled her into his arms, propriety forgotten. Tomorrow night, then, he whispered against her hair. And afterward I shall ask you the question I've waited 5 years to ask, and I shall give the answer I've waited 5 years to give. They stood together in the fading afternoon light, the promise of tomorrow both terrifying and exhilarating. The final confrontation, the final healing, and then, perhaps, a beginning. Lady Harrington's ballroom glittered with candlelight and jewels, the cream of society dressed in their finest. Annalise stood at the entrance, flanked by Edmund and Lord Weston, feeling the weight of every gaze. Her gown of deep emerald silk had been chosen with care, the colour of rebirth, of truth, of eyes that could no longer be deceived. Edmund's hand rested lightly at the small of her back, a silent promise of support. Lord Weston stood slightly ahead, his expression determined. Lady Waverley, the footman announced. His Grace, the Duke of Ravenshire. Lord Weston. The trio entered with heads held high. Conversation faltered, then resumed with increased intensity. Fans fluttered, eyebrows raised, whispers spread like wildfire. Across the room, Lady Amelia Blackwood stood frozen, her face pale beneath its artificial colour. She had not expected this, not all 3 of them united in purpose. She's frightened, Edmund observed quietly. Good, Annalise replied. She should be. They made their way through the crowd, accepting greetings with polite smiles, but never separating. Their strategy was simple, to be seen together, to demonstrate through their unity that Amelia's new accusations were as false as her old ones. Lady Waverley, Lady Harrington approached, her curiosity barely contained. How lovely to see you again after your sojourn in the country, and in such distinguished company. Thank you for your kind invitation, Lady Harrington, Annalise replied smoothly. Lord Weston, His Grace, and I have been discussing mutual acquaintances. It's remarkable how time can clarify the most confusing situations. Indeed, Lady Harrington's eyes gleamed with interest. Any particular situations you care to elaborate upon? Edmund stepped forward before Annalise could respond. "I believe Miss Sheffield is preparing to perform, Lady Harrington. We mustn't miss her playing. She was quite exceptional at your last musical evening." Effectively dismissed, Lady Harrington had no choice but to move away. But the message had been delivered. The three of them were aligned against Amelia's narrative. As the evening progressed, they continued their careful campaign. Never confronting Amelia directly, never acknowledging the rumors explicitly, simply demonstrating through their solidarity that the tales being whispered were false. Annalise found herself relaxing slightly as the initial tension eased. Edmund remained close, his presence a steady comfort. Lord Weston proved an unexpectedly charming ally, his wit and social connections helping to smooth potentially awkward moments. It was during a brief respite, when Edmund had been called away by an elderly duchess, and Lord Weston was engaged with a business associate, that Amelia finally approached. "Lady Waverley," she curtsied with exaggerated deference. "How clever you've been, turning them both against me." Annalise regarded her former friend coldly. "I didn't have to turn anyone against you, Amelia. Your own actions did that quite effectively. You think you've won, don't you?" Amelia's voice was low, her smile fixed. "The Duke, your reputation, everything you lost. This isn't about winning, isn't it?" Amelia's eyes flashed with malice. "You return to London, flaunt your new title and fortune, seduce the Duke all over again, and now parade around with Weston as though the three of you are the best of friends. It's quite the performance. The only performance here is yours, Amelia," Annalise replied evenly, "and it's growing tedious. We have the letters, your confession to the late Duke, the evidence of payment. It's over." Colour drained from Amelia's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Annalise smiled coldly. "Would you care to test that theory publicly? Because I assure you I've spent 5 years dreaming of this moment, of watching you face the consequences of your actions, of seeing your carefully constructed world crumble as mine once did." "What do you want?" Amelia whispered. "I want you to leave London. Tonight. I want you to disappear from our lives as completely as I was once forced to disappear from yours. I want you to know that every day you spend in exile, I will be here, in the world you coveted, with the man you wanted, living the life you tried to steal. You've become quite ruthless, Annalise. I've become what you made me, but with one critical difference." Annalise leaned closer. "I still know the difference between justice and cruelty. Be grateful for that distinction." Amelia's face contorted with a mixture of hatred and fear. "This isn't over." "Yes, Amelia, it is." Edmund appeared at Annalise's side, his expression hard as he looked at Amelia. "Is everything all right here?" "Perfectly," Annalise replied, not taking her eyes from Amelia's face. "Lady Blackwood was just leaving." "Weren't you, Amelia?" For a moment it seemed Amelia might cause a scene. Then, with a visible effort, she composed herself. "Of course. I find I have a sudden headache. If you'll excuse me." They watched as she retreated through the crowd, her posture rigid with humiliation. "What did you say to her?" Edmund asked softly. "The truth." Annalise turned to him, suddenly weary. "That it's over. That she's lost." He took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Are you all right?" "I will be." She managed a small smile. "When we're finally free of the past." "Then let's leave," Edmund suggested. "We've made our point. The Tun has seen us together." "Seen." "Then let's leave," Edmund suggested. "We've made our point. The Tun has seen us together, seen our unity against her accusations. There's nothing more to accomplish here." Annalise hesitated, glancing around the crowded ballroom. "I should find Lord Weston, thank him for his support." "I'm right here, my lady." Lord Weston appeared beside them, his expression concerned. "And I concur with his grace. Our mission is accomplished. Lady Blackwood has been effectively neutralized." "Are you certain?" Annalise asked. "Once we leave, she might try to salvage the situation." "Let her try," Edmund said grimly. "The seeds of doubt have been planted. By tomorrow, when she fails to appear at Lady Pembroke's luncheon, those doubts will grow. By the end of the week, when she's nowhere to be found in London, the truth will be accepted." Lord Weston nodded. "Society has a remarkable ability to reconstruct history according to current circumstances. Within a month, everyone will claim they never believed the accusations against you in the first place." Annalise couldn't help but laugh at the cynical assessment. How fickle the tongue can be. "Their fickleness works in our favor tonight," Edmund said, offering his arm. "Shall we?" With a grateful nod to Lord Weston, Annalise allowed Edmund to escort her from the ballroom. His carriage waited in the line of elegant vehicles outside Lady Harrington's townhouse. As they settled into its plush interior, Annalise felt the tension of the evening finally release. She leaned back against the cushions with a sigh. "It's really over, isn't it?" she murmured as the carriage began to move. "The scandal, the lies, yes." Edmund took her hand in his. "But something else is just beginning." The hope in his voice brought tears to her eyes. After so much pain, so much loss, could happiness really be this close? "Take me to the garden," she said suddenly. Edmund looked at her in confusion. "The garden? At this hour? Your rose garden at Ravensshire House. I know you maintain a townhouse garden as well." She squeezed his hand. "I want to see it. Now." In the moonlight, understanding dawned in his eyes. He rapped on the roof of the carriage, instructing the driver to change direction. They rode in expectant silence through London's darkened streets. When the carriage stopped before Ravensshire House, Edmund helped her down with exquisite care, as though she might dissolve into mist if handled too roughly. The townhouse garden was smaller than its country counterpart, but no less beautiful. Roses climbed the walls, their scent heavy in the night air. A fountain played quietly at its centre, silver in the moonlight. Edmund guided her along the gravel path to a small stone bench, partially hidden by a trellis of climbing roses. "I come here often," he said softly, "when the memories become too much to bear." Annalise touched a velvet petal with gentle fingers. "It's peaceful. It reminds me of you." Edmund's voice was husky with emotion, beautiful, resilient, thriving despite all attempts to destroy it. She turned to face him, her heart pounding. "5 years ago, I was a girl who believed in fairy tales, who thought love could conquer all obstacles. And now I'm a woman who knows that love alone isn't enough." Annalise held his gaze. "It requires trust, forgiveness, the courage to begin again after everything has been lost." Edmund knelt before her, heedless of the gravel beneath his knees. He reached into his pocket and withdrew the ring she had returned to him only the day before. "Annalise Montrose," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "Lady Waverley, love of my life. I have no right to ask, no reason to hope, and yet I cannot help but ask, cannot help but hope. Will you do me the great honor of becoming my wife, of allowing me to spend every day of the rest of my life attempting to be worthy of your love?" The moment stretched between them, 5 years of pain and separation distilled into a single heartbeat. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Edmund. I will marry you." His face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as though it had always been destined for her hand. Edmund rose, pulling her gently to her feet and into his arms. His lips found hers in a kiss that spoke of promises kept, of love enduring, of a future bright with possibility. When they finally drew apart, breathless and laughing, Annalise rested her forehead against his. "It seems impossible," she murmured, "that after everything we should find our way back to each other." "Not impossible," Edmund smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Inevitable. Some loves are simply meant to be, regardless of the obstacles placed in their path." In the moonlit garden, surrounded by roses that had bloomed against all odds, Annalise finally allowed herself to believe in fairy tales once more. The wedding of the Duke of Ravenshire to Lady Waverley took place in the chapel at Ravenshire Park on a crisp December morning. Snow dusted the ground like sugar, and holly berries gleamed red against dark green leaves. The ceremony was small by aristocratic standards, only close friends and trusted servants in attendance. Lady Pembroke beamed from the front row, tears of joy sparkling in her eyes. Lord Weston stood as Edmund's witness, his usual jovial demeanour softened by the solemnity of the occasion. Annalise wore a gown of ivory silk, simple yet elegant, adorned only with seed pearls and the sapphire necklace Edmund had given her. Her hair was dressed with white roses, their delicate perfume surrounding her like a blessing. As she walked toward Edmund, who waited for her at the altar with barely contained emotion, Annalise felt the ghosts of the past finally release their hold on her heart. The vows they exchanged were traditional, but the meaning behind them transcended the ancient words. A promise not just to love and honor, but to trust, to believe, to choose each other every day, regardless of what circumstances might arise. When Edmund slipped the wedding band onto her finger to join the sapphire engagement ring, his hand trembled slightly. "With this ring, I thee wed," he said, his voice clear and sure despite his emotion. "With my body, I thee worship. With all my worldly goods, I thee endow." Annalise looked up into his beloved face, seeing the boy she had first loved and the man he had become, seeing their future stretching before them, bright with possibility. The vicar pronounced them husband and wife. Edmund's kiss was gentle, reverent, a promise of deeper intimacies to come. They emerged from the chapel to a shower of rose petals, thrown by the assembled staff and tenants who had gathered to celebrate their duke's happiness. The wedding breakfast was held in the great hall of Ravenshire Park, transformed for the occasion with evergreen boughs and white flowers. Laughter and music filled the ancient space as the small company celebrated the union that had overcome so many obstacles. Lady Pembroke cornered Annalise during a quiet moment, her eyes bright with satisfaction. "I told you the past needn't poison your future," she said, squeezing Annalise's hands. "And now look at you, a duchess. More importantly, a happy woman." "Thank you, Margaret," Annalise replied warmly, "for your wisdom, your support, your friendship when I most needed it." The older woman smiled. "Love finds a way, my dear. It always does, if we're brave enough to let it." Across the room, Edmund watched his bride with undisguised adoration. When their eyes met, a smile of such tenderness crossed his face that Annalise felt her heart might burst with happiness. Later, as twilight fell, they slipped away from the celebrations to the rose garden. Though dormant for winter, it retained a quiet beauty, the structure of the bushes promising abundant life when spring returned. They stood together in the fading light, the Duchess and her Duke, arms entwined against the evening chill. "Are you happy, my love?" Edmund asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Completely." Annalise turned in his arms to face him. "I never imagined such happiness was possible. Not after everything, nor I." His arms tightened around her. "When you left London, it felt as though the light had gone from my world. Now you've brought it back, brighter than ever." She reached up to touch his face, tracing the beloved features with gentle fingers. "No more shadows," she whispered. "No more doubt. Only this. Only us." Edmund captured her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Only us. Forever." As darkness fell over Ravenshire Park, the Duke led his Duchess back toward the warmth and light of their home. Behind them, the garden waited patiently for spring, for renewal, for the roses that would bloom again, more beautiful for having endured the winter's trials. Just as love, tested by betrayal and separation, grows stronger in the healing. Just as two hearts once broken find greater joy in their mending. 1 year later, Annalise stood in her rose garden at Ravenshire Park, watching as Edmund approached across the lawn. In his arms, he carried their infant daughter, wrapped in a blanket of softest wool despite the summer warmth. "My two favourite women," Edmund said as he reached her, his face alight with joy. Lady Rose was most insistent on joining her mother for a garden stroll. Annalise smiled, reaching out to stroke her daughter's downy head. "She's as stubborn as her father." "And as beautiful as her mother," Edmund countered, leaning down to kiss his wife tenderly. "A perfect combination of our best qualities, I should think." They walked together through the garden, now in full bloom. Roses in every hue scented the air, climbing trellises and arching over pathways in profusion. Much had changed in the year since their wedding. Amelia had left England entirely, seeking refuge with distant relatives in America. Lord Weston had married a widow with a keen mind for business, and the two had become frequent dinner guests at Ravenshire Park. Society had, as predicted, reconstructed its collective memory. The scandal that had once destroyed Annalise's life was now spoken of, if at all, as a tragic misunderstanding, corrected by the Duke's noble perseverance and Lady Waverley's dignified return. But the greatest change had been the arrival of little Rose, named for the flowers that had symbolized their love through separation and reunion. Born with Edmund's dark hair and Annalise's green eyes, she had instantly become the center of their world. "I received a letter from Margaret today," Annalise said, as they settled on a bench beneath an arbor of yellow roses. "She sends her love and promises to visit before the season begins." Edmund nodded, cradling their sleeping daughter against his chest. "We must persuade her to stay through Christmas this year. Rose should have her honorary grandmother present for her first Yuletide celebrations." "Do you ever wonder," Annalise asked after a moment's contemplation, "what might have happened if I hadn't returned to London that night? If I had remained in the country, nursing my wounds and my bitterness?" Edmund considered the question seriously. "I like to think I would have found you eventually, that some force in the universe would have drawn us back together, regardless of the circumstances. You remain a romantic, Your Grace. Only where you're concerned, Duchess." His free arm encircled her shoulders, drawing her close against his side. "5 years couldn't extinguish what was between us. I doubt even a lifetime would have been sufficient." Annalise rested her head on his shoulder, contentment washing over her in gentle waves. The past with its pain seemed distant now, like a story heard long ago, rather than a wound personally experienced. "I love you, Edmund," she said softly. "I think I've loved you from the first moment I saw you, though I didn't recognize it then. And I've loved you through separation and misunderstanding, through doubt and reunion," Edmund replied, his voice husky with emotion. "I will love you through all the days and years to come, until the last breath leaves my body, and perhaps even beyond." Little Rose stirred in his arms, her tiny face scrunching momentarily before relaxing back into peaceful slumber. The perfect emblem of their love. Born of pain and separation, nurtured through forgiveness and trust, blooming into something beautiful beyond imagination. In the rose garden at Ravenshire Park, the Duke and his Duchess sat together in the golden afternoon light. Not a fairy tale ending, but something far more precious. A real beginning, hard-won and deeply cherished. A love that had endured winter's harshest trials and emerged stronger, more vibrant in the spring. For true love, like the roses that surrounded them, doesn't fear the thorns. It acknowledges them, respects their purpose, and blooms gloriously despite them. Or perhaps, as the Duke and Duchess of Ravensshire had learned, because of them. My dear reader, thank you for joining me on this journey through the trials and triumphs of Annalise and Edmund's epic love story. If you enjoyed this tale of redemption, second chances, and the healing power of love, I'd be deeply grateful if you'd consider subscribing to my channel for more romantic adventures. Your likes, comments, and shares help these stories reach others who might find comfort or joy in them. Until our next literary rendezvous, may your own life be filled with love that endures all seasons.